So let's take a few breaths to welcome Rosie Acosta. Let's just go ahead and take a deep inhale together while we're settling into this space. And exhale out through the mouth. Inhale deep and exhale out. One more time. Inhale deeply and exhale out. And just notice the next 3 or 4 breaths. Maybe feeling how the navel rises and falls as the body breathes in and breathes out. And just take a moment to just remember the last time that you felt a creative spark, a spark of inspiration. And just remember where you were, what you were doing, what that frequency felt like in the body. And just remember that that feeling of that creative spark is a transmission, it's a connection to source that is always available to you. So when you feel ready, just place your hands somewhere on your body where you would like to bless yourself, anoint yourself, or honor yourself. And just take a deep breath in and out. And when you feel ready, just slowly begin to deepen your breath and come back, opening your eyes or lifting your gaze, and just welcome back into the room. So, thank you, all of you, for being here. I invite you to have your journals or your notebooks nearby um, because this is going to be a very good conversation with my dear friend Rosie, whose book just came out. Rosie, when did your book come out? It was like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago now.
Oh, no, it's been like a month and a half.
Oh, wow.
It
Time
feels
is
like it
flying.
just happened. It came out on 2/22/22, and it still feels like it's the first week, and I can't believe how much time has gone by.
Yes. So, Rosie's book is called You Are Radically Loved. And I think during the process of both of us writing and launching our books, we had many conversations about the process of this experience of having a book published. And I feel like both of us were just like, somebody needs to share this information of what actually happens and what you need to do because nobody tells you. At least nobody told me.
Yeah, same. We just, I mean, I know that a lot of there was like three people that I heavily relied on. You were one of them during this process because it is not like anything else. I mean, it's not like anything that I've ever done in my life. And what's interesting is that it made me realize that literally anyone can write a book, like anyone. And
Mhm.
that's not to say, oh, anyone can do it. No, but you don't have to have gone to school and received a degree in English to write a book, which is actually really encouraging. And now that I've gone through the process, it's a little less daunting. But I think a lot of what helped me in this process, Tracee, was talking to you and being able to remember my why. And there was a couple of things too that I remember, things that you had said to me when I was thinking about doing something and I was trying to kind of flush out some ideas with regard to I didn't tell you exactly what I was doing. And what I was telling you is that I was trying to hash out some ideas to put on the page, and I think it was with regard to my personal experience, my personal story. I was hesitant to write about growing up in East LA and growing up in an environment that was very chaotic. And I remember you saying, like, that is part of who you are. And this is so important to be able to share your story, like your actual life story.
Mm-hmm.
And and you went on to talk about your past life as a producer and sort of how you followed that journey on your own, and your sort of transition when you transitioned careers, and how important it was to be able to honor the parts of us that learn things throughout the journey. And that really helped me actually shape the structure of my book, because I was like, okay, so I know that I have to start at the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's something that's really important to be able to remember, as far as if you have a story, and if, like you said in the beginning during that meditation, you have that spark, that desire, that it's there for a reason. That if you're called to write or tell your story, that there's a reason that that wants to be expressed. We are communication conduits, like
Mm-hmm.
I read this today, actually, this morning during my meditation. I read the Book of Awakening every day by Mark Nepo. It's part of my like little meditation practice. I like to read whatever the entry for that day. And in fact, today, the entry was talking about, and I'm happy to read it later, if there's time, but it's talking about how fish are meant to swim, birds are designed to fly, and us as human beings are meant to speak, to communicate. That is part of our gift. And if we don't express ourselves, there's a part of our spirit that doesn't get realized. What he says is, there's a little part of us that dies when we don't
Mm-hmm.
communicate.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, ooh, like that is so
Yeah.
true. And thinking about today's conversation and all the incredible, beautiful people here, how everybody has that same desire to
Mm-hmm.
communicate and to
Yeah.
speak. And I think for me, it's always been helpful to hear stories from the people who have done it and have sort of been on the other side. Like when I got sick, and I was texting you, and I'm like,
Yeah.
Tracee, I don't help me, because I just wanted to feel that comfort. We
Mm-hmm.
always want to know that somebody got to the other side and they got there alive, and that
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't the end of the world somehow. So that's why I think these conversations are so important.
I completely agree. And I'm glad that we're able to do it in this way. And I'm also glad that you started with this story from Mark Nepo's book, because I definitely believe that we all have a story in us. And the question is, and maybe this is a question you can answer um, in your journals as we're talking, is what is the story that you want to tell, that you need to tell, that you have to tell? And knowing what that story is, and also knowing what your point of view about that story or about that subject matter is really important. Because what I would share is, when I was approached by Shambhala to write the book on Yoga Nidra, I was already writing another book about something else, which is the book that I happen to be writing right now. And my first reaction was, well, I love Yoga Nidra, and Yoga Nidra is going to be a part of the book that I want to write. But there's this person who's writing a book on Yoga Nidra, and there's that person, and there's this person, and there's already these other books on Yoga Nidra. And I really had to sit with it. And I'm glad that I think my practice really helped me to kind of pause and observe what was arising for me in that moment of being asked. Um, where I really had to sit and just say, oh, wait a second, what this yoga nidra to me is not a subject matter. It's not an academic subject. Yoga nidra is actually a practice, a technique, and a state of consciousness and a goddess that I feel I have a relationship with. Right. So if I write about this relationship, which is unique to me, then that's a different story to tell about a subject matter that could be something really academic and kind of, um, you know, paint by numbers in a way. So I think the question for everyone is what is the story? What is the subject matter? Why do you need to tell this story? And what is your point of view about it? What do you have um, that is inside of you that is unique and just wants to flower? That would be the first question that I would ask. Um, and I just want, because we want to talk about the creative process of writing a book. I have my mind map done for this. So so the creative process of writing a book, I'm just going to talk about like a few things, and then I'd love to like hear, like, we can, this is just a conversation at this point. Um, for me, knowing my season of inspiration was really important, meaning that I am on fire to do whatever it is that I'm inspired to do in certain seasons of the year. For me personally, spring and summer are those places of inspiration. What I learned when I moved to New Mexico and there was a real winter was that winter was not the time for me to try to come up with inspiration. It was time for me to kind of hibernate and rest more, right? Whereas my beloved, he loves the winter. He goes out and he starts hiking 6 miles a day in the snow and in the ice. And that's like his favorite time of year. That's when he gets really inspired. So the question that I would ask is, what is the season of your inspiration? Do you know? Did you find that you had a season of inspiration, or it's a little different maybe living in LA, you
Oh,
know?
for me, that
Mhm.
question, it's such a great question. It's crazy is that it's not crazy. But as you were guiding us when we first started, all I kept thinking about was I just realized that most of my book was written when I was in Oregon, and there's a reason for
Mm.
that.
Mm.
And now you're asking this question, so obviously it's coming in for a reason, which is really interesting. Um, because being in LA is very, to me, it's the hustle and bustle. It is a rushing conduit. It is an energetic. I mean, Tracee, being here, you're
Mhm.
just on constantly. There's things happening. It's this very hurried river type of frequency, And so for me being in LA, the only times I could ever create or write was early in the morning, like
Mhm.
4:30, 5 a.m.,
Mhm.
6 a.m. That's it.
Yep.
After that, there's like nothing. I would try to write and there was no, I couldn't do it. There was just no
Yep.
way. The minute that the city begins to wake up, it creates a certain type of frenetic static. And there's emails coming in, and there's just like the energy of the city is woken up. And for me, I feel like creativity as a muse, she's very particular. She likes things done a certain way for me. And what I found is that my muse loves space and she loves
Mhm.
to be in greenery. She loves trees. She loves to be in nature. She loves to be by a beach, or she loves to just be in a space where it's not as fast as LA. And I'll tell you like a quick story. For some reason, the whole idea for the book came in when I was living in Portland. And I tell the story in the book of my move to Portland from LA. I'm back in LA now, but book number two. Side note. But when I made that transition, I'd never lived anywhere else. So it was scary for me to move into a new city, because I didn't know anybody and it
Mhm.
was just different. I did love the space though. I loved nature. I loved being able to go hiking, and it just had a different energy. Once I settled in, it was almost like being in the city made me more distracted because there
Mhm.
was more to do and there was more people to see and just more distraction. When I was in Portland, it was almost like I was forced in a way to create, which was really
Mhm.
fun because it's like, oh, I don't have the distraction of my family is in LA. I get my mom showing up here randomly. It's just that's not happening up there, right? It sort of fueled me to be more creative because I didn't have the feeling of competition. And I'm not saying competition with others, I'm saying competition within myself to live up to this high standard of living in a city or being a certain way or looking a certain way, etc. It just felt more insular for me and I needed that. So by the time the idea for the book came in and I wrote the proposal and I went through that process, I ended up moving back here, and it was after a few years being here shopping the book at the beginning of 2020 is when I sold the book to Penguin Random House, and then I wrote the book during the pandemic, right? Same time
Mhm.
you were writing the book, your
Mhm.
book,
Yep.
right? So I found that the bulk of the book was written. I just felt compelled to go back to where I found the muse to begin with. I'm like, okay, well, the idea for the book came while I was in Portland. So maybe because I was here, Tracee, and I couldn't do it. I could not
Mhm.
write. I couldn't get into it. I just there felt like I needed to go somewhere. I've read so many stories, so many books. I follow a lot of screenwriters. I listen to a lot of screenwriting podcasts, and I love
Mm.
listening to these screenwriters talk about how a lot of them go away. You know, a
Yeah.
lot of them have. There's this book, really great book for anybody here who's into rituals. It's called Daily Rituals. Do you have this,
No, mm-mm,
Tracee?
I don't know it.
It's beautiful. It's like every writer in the history of writing. I mean, Stephen King's in there, just like, and it's their daily rituals, how they write.
Mm.
And what I notice is that a lot of these professional writers, they go away or they have to find that space. So I'm like, okay, so lesson number one, space matters, right?
Yeah.
Finding that space really is important because the muse wants to come in. She wants a comfortable space. She wants to feel like you've made the space for her to come.
Yeah. I completely identify with everything you're saying because um I experienced the same thing is that my writing time was like 4:30 in the morning to about 11. And at first it was shorter because I didn't create boundaries in my home, right? But once I realized what my flow was for the day of where creativity was coming in and where I was able to listen and to download, I said to my husband, I was like, okay, I figured out what my flow is. What I need you to do is just not bother me at
Yes.
all until 11.
Yes.
And those are my hours where I'm just going to be downstairs in the basement and I'm going to be in my space. And then there were certain things that I realized, like, oh, the space for research is, and the time for research is actually different than the time for downloading. The time for me to like write meditations and practices is actually not in my home, even though I lived in a place that was surrounded by nature. It was like, oh, if I go to Ojai for a couple of days and I go to these like secret hot springs and I let myself just like soak in the mud, all of a sudden there's all this information that's coming in. So for me as well, nature is and was absolutely important, especially because in my book, I have all these nature amplification practices. Those were all written in the spaces that I was talking about in the book. Um, so I guess the inquiry that I would love to give people from this is, where is your sacred space of where you feel most connected? Where are you able to connect to the muse? Where do you feel the most creative? Because not everybody feels creative in nature.
Or in the
I
morning.
or in the morning. I know plenty of people. I used to I was married to a comedian ages ago, and he would do all of his writing of his jokes literally almost in the middle of the night. So when is that time for you? Where is that space for you? It's really important to know that. And then being able to ask the people around you for the support that you need, because it's if you're not writing or creating, I think it's hard for people to know that when you're in the middle of a flow of a thought or a flow of a feeling that you're writing about, and then all of a sudden someone comes in to ask just something that seems like a simple question, your whole flow of everything can be completely discombobulated. So, really, just asking people and telling them what you need and asking them for support, I think, is really important as well.
Yeah. I love that. I think the boundary thing. I 1000% agree with you, Tracee. Man, if I want to see my sort of, Tori calls it the little beast, come out, it's definitely in those moments where I where he would come and it's something so innocuous, like, did you want me to toast the muffin for you, or something, like, did you want me to, or even, do you want me to leave you alone? It's like, you know the rules. Why are you asking? But I agree with you. I think setting those parameters and having, knowing when. So this was a really cool, I can't honestly tell you guys where I got this from. It could have been from that Daily Rituals book.
Mm,
But in order to find out that I was a morning writing person, I had to try all three on for size. So I did a couple of morning, right when I did the morning ones, like, I would set the timer, and it's just like, just do a morning, I would call it morning musings, just
mm,
free writing. Just 200 words. Easy, like a paragraph. Every morning at the same time for a week. You try it out. The minute I did it, I was like, oh, this is me. Like, I know I'm a morning person for sure. Because
mm-hmm,
I would do 500 words, I would do 1,000. And I'm like, okay, you don't have to do the most, because I'm that person too.
mm-hmm.
So then it was the following week, it was midday. So do a midday session. That didn't work at all. I didn't even do the week. I did it for like maybe 2-3 days,
Yeah,
and
I
I was like,
can't.
okay,
That
yeah,
would never work for
no,
me.
because I'm like, there's too much stuff going on, and I had the Microsoft Word document open from the 2 days before. I'm like, okay, this is not gonna happen. I'm just not doing this. I'm not a midday writer person. The interesting one was the evening one, and I actually didn't mind it, but I did try two different evening sessions. One was around 6, like the end of the day, once everybody's clocked out, right? Like 6 to about 7:30. That was okay. But then I did another one around 8:30, like
Mm,
right before bed.
mm-hmm,
And that was really interesting. I didn't actually mind it as much. And it was a little bit similar to the morning time, almost like okay, my evening purge
like the
type of
second
thing.
wind kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was fine. So I saw the pattern. I'm like, okay, so early in the morning or late at night. And I ended up taking to the morning because I wanted to be done, right? I wanted my tasks to be
Mm,
complete.
mm-hmm.
So I opted for the morning, but it's definitely a technique that I would offer to everybody here to try, to just see, because everybody's different, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it's important for you to find that flow for you, and when the muse feels, and look, it could change. You might be a project based writer where you feel like, I can write Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. all day and just have this be my job, and then the rest of the time I can not write. You can find the system that works for you, but the point is to find the system. You have to actually
Hmm.
dedicate time to finding out what works for you and then committing to doing it. Uh,
Yeah. And
yeah.
I would actually even say find that before you start the project.
Yes, a
You don't
thousand
want to be
percent.
you don't want to be in the project and trying to figure out
Mm-mm.
what your flow is. So, you know, look at the seasons, look at, thinking about what happens with the sunlight. That was another thing that I discovered in New Mexico, is that where I happen to live right now, and the direction that my house faces is completely different than the direction that my house faced in Topanga. So I don't get the morning sun, right? Which is really inspiring to me. So I had to make adjustments for that. I'm getting ready to do the thing of going away for a couple of days, right? To be able to really focus on everything. So yeah, figure out what that is first. The other thing I want to pull a thread on that you mentioned was that your book proposal.
Hmm.
I really feel like the proposal and being able to sit with the proposal and finish the proposal is one of those rituals, or we could even say rite of passage, that once you complete that proposal and you feel really good about that proposal, it will be so much easier for you to finish your project because you have the bones, you have the skeleton of what it is. And I do know a few people who have like started their book, and because they don't have an agent yet, or because they don't know which publisher they're going to go to, they decide that they're not going to do a book proposal first. And I really think that, and this kind of comes from my work being a producer and a development executive for films for years, is that we wouldn't like greenlight someone writing a script until we actually saw what they call the treatment, which is basically like a proposal. So one of the things that I would offer is that, and we're going to share a book proposal template for you so that you have access to that. We're going to send it to you in the follow up email with this. Is that just take a look, because I had never seen a book proposal template. When someone was like, okay, you have to write a book proposal, Shambhala was like, send us your book proposal for the Yoga Nidra book. Or I was doing the book proposal for the other thing. I was like, what is a book proposal? And so as I started to like sit with the book proposal, the first thing I felt was overwhelm, because what I realized was, oh, my thoughts around what I want to write about are actually not organized in this way, right? Because I'm not a linear thinker. So, one of the great things I think to do is to have that book proposal and just sit with it. You don't have to do anything, right? So this exercise, I would say, is not about a doing. It's really about absorbing, okay, what is this book proposal? What do I have to offer here? And as you do, then what you can do is and I would recommend post-it notes or some kind of, even if you have a whiteboard, that each time you have an inspiration for something that fits, or you think might be something that fits in the book proposal, you write it down and you post it on your wall. And you just keep those post-it notes, and if you could see my wall over here, it's full of post-it notes because I have my whole book structured out on the wall. So find your own way. The post-it notes might not be the way for you, but find your own way to capture what is your book about now that you have, maybe you even take the book proposal and you post it somewhere where you could see it almost like a vision board, even though it's just a template, because it will start to go into your consciousness as, okay, this is what you need to do. And this, I think the book writing process, or any kind of creative process, is that it becomes part of your consciousness in a way that it's always weaving through everything that you do. And the issue that what you were talking about, like the distractions in Los Angeles or the frequency even of being in a city, if that's not your vibe, is that it kind of interrupts that flow of the weaving. So figure out like how you can start to weave this in, even if it's just the title of your book that you think you have, start placing it in places that you see so it starts weaving through your awareness.
Yeah, I love this. I'm like, just, I want to take notes and I'm trying to look for my pen. I'm like, where is my notes for Tracee right now? I could write this down. Yeah, I mean, my process, I'm a visual person as well, but I'm more of a like this type of person. I
Mm-hmm.
like to write. I don't know if you guys can see, but I like to
Yeah.
write things down and have them. I like to write instead of type. And then once I do that, I like to, I'm a circle. What is this? Not a Venn diagram, but like a type of, I do a big circle idea in the middle. And then from there, I spring off
Yeah.
other.
It's
Yes.
like a mind map.
Yes, exactly. So that was how I
Mm-hmm.
structured all of my chapters. That's how I
Me
structured the
too.
book. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I structured the proposal. The proposal was the
Mm-hmm.
same thing. All the components that a proposal has, from my experience, it's like you have the book concept, you have an overview, you've got marketing and promotion, platform competitive titles, you've got market research, sample chapters.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, if you have a platform, you do press clippings or photos if you want, that kind of thing. And yeah, it you do a good proposal, you're pretty confident once it's time to write the book because all you're doing is you're just filling it in, you
Exactly.
know.
Exactly.
And
And you, yeah.
it is, and it is harder to me, and I think the same as for you, Tracee. We've talked about this before, but it was harder to do the proposal than it was to write the actual book.
Oh yeah, it was 100% because it really was like, okay, this is something I'm handing in to the publisher and they're going to be judging whether or not this book is quote unquote worthy.
Right.
Right, based on what information I have
Right.
in this proposal. Um, and then, not to mention, I want to also mention that most proposals these days that I know of, and this is included in the template that we're going to give you, they ask for two sample chapters, right? So think about the two sample chapters. Where do you feel the most comfortable? Where do you feel like, okay, I know the most about this chapter that I'm going to write? So as you're writing your proposal, think about, or you even have your proposal just up on your wall, think about what are the two chapters that you're going to offer for this book, because that's generally where they're judging, um, if they're going to take the book on, is based on those sample chapters and obviously the proposal as a whole. So just, think about that as you look at the chapters, as you look at the book proposal. Um, I think that this is probably a good time to talk about what to do when you feel like you want to give up, because I feel like the, the book proposal process could be the place where you start to get discouraged, which is why I'm just advocating for kind of living with the proposal without feeling like you need to do anything with it
Yes.
right away.
Yes. So I did my first proposal, real proposal, not like what I turned in when I first decided I wanted to write a book. My proposal was literally like this, like one page. I had no idea what I
Right.
was doing. There was no like Google how to do a book proposal. I was just like, here's some table of contents. And they're like, this is not a book proposal. So luckily we have so many tools now. But I did my first real proposal in 2015. It went through 3 different iterations, and it
Mm,
was on the fourth, actually. So I did 3 rounds, and then on the fourth round, which was the end of 2019, so it took me 4 years. to actually do it. And I have to say, I wasn't in a rush to write the book. I knew that the book I wanted to write was going to get written, and I'm glad that it took that long because
Mm,
so many things changed and I
hmm.
changed. In
Right.
fact, from the moment I sold the book in 2020 to when it came out 2 years later, uh, I'm a different person even now. You know, I go back and I read it and I'm like, look, I admittedly will always be my own worst critic. I always think it could be better. I
Mm-hmm.
understand that about myself, but at the same time, I'm really happy and proud of my work because I knew that I let it gestate for as long as it needed. I didn't rush
Yes.
it. I
Yes.
didn't try and, because in the beginning I was so the first three iterations of the proposal were basically trash
Mm-hmm.
because I was just trying to fit into the mold. I was like, oh, I just need to fit into the mold. I'm like, I'm competing in this
Mm-hmm.
industry and I have to write a certain way and look a certain way and write about a certain type of topic a certain way. It's a self help book, so it needs to be like this structure. And it just wouldn't work, Tracee. It would not work. It
Right.
would
Because it
not
wasn't
work
you.
because
You
it wasn't
weren't,
me.
you weren't being authentic. So that's
Yeah.
the other thing, the authentic voice.
Yeah.
Right.
So now to tie this into what you asked, what do you do when you feel like giving up? Man, I quit like 12 different times where I was like, I can't. And maybe that's also why it took 4 years. So it's why it
Mm-hmm.
took so long because I would quit, but you can't, if you're really called to do something like this, you can't really quit. It's like the universe will not let you quit. You
Yeah.
might just need a break. So I would always take the feeling of this is never going to happen, which I had. I'm not good enough, which I had. This nobody's going to read this book, which I had. All of those feelings of doubt where when they come in and you feel like this is just not for me, I'm not meant to do this. It might not be the time right in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
So let it percolate, let it. I'm raising monarchs right now, right? So I keep posting about this. I'm obsessed. The monarchs are going extinct, and Tori and I are determined to create a monarch sanctuary. So we're raising caterpillars
I
right now.
love that.
And it's almost like the one that we saved told everybody else, and all of a sudden we have so many,
Mm.
which is really bizarre, right? I and not bizarre. I know that they communicate and they're like, go to the house in the valley. They're gonna save you. But what's interesting is that it's a 4-phase process, right? It starts, the monarch lays an egg,
Mm.
it turns into a caterpillar, and then it turns into a chrysalis, metamorphosizes, and then it turns into a butterfly. And the process of it going and creating this silken, like, sleeping bag, essentially,
Mm.
to become a chrysalis takes a long time. They're in there for about 16 days as they metamorphosize. And as they come out of this shell, this encasing, it is very aggressive for them. They have like a little pinhole size hole where they start to have to really push and work and work and work to push through and come out as a butterfly. But they have to go through this process because it makes their wings strong,
Mm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's by design.
Mm.
Now, I think about this anytime I feel like I want to give up, like I want to stop something. And Tracee, we just had this conversation recently, right? So
Mm-hmm.
anytime I'm overwhelmed with that feeling of this doesn't matter, like
Mm-hmm.
nobody cares, or this isn't an important thing, I think about that process. And we are built to withstand those challenges. We're built to weather those storms. And maybe as you feel that, especially with wanting to get your voice out, wanting to speak, and remember what I said in the beginning, that quote by Mark Nepo, that when we don't express ourselves, that part of us dies a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking, instead of killing the dream or killing the voice, just let it become a chrysalis a little longer,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just allow
Mm-hmm.
it to, just give it space. There's no rush. in expression. People that need to hear what you have to say will still need to hear it in a year or 5 years or however
Mhm.
long it takes.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that because this idea of the cocoon just reminds me of the rest nest, right? And, for me, my writing cave was a rest nest, my hang drum, my harmonium, and my writing desk. And it was literally like back in the day, I don't know if they do this anymore. Do they still do circuit training? Back in the day, I used to
Yes.
do, oh, they still do that. Okay. I used to do that back in the day, like way back in the day,
It's
circuit
called
training.
hit training now,
Oh, it's not
Tracee.
called hit. Okay. So it was literally like a circuit of
Yeah.
let me rest and write because rest is one of my muses, right? Rest is one of my muses. And then I know maybe I need some sound or some vibration to break up the
Mm.
thoughts that want to keep,
Yes.
whatever it is. And so I think that it's, again, one of these things that we have to think about is what are the things that, and maybe answering this question now is like, what are the things that you think would make you quit?
Mm.
What are the things that you think would make you quit? And if you can write down 3 things that you think would make you quit, you can also come up with the antidotes for those things so that you have them at the ready. So that when somebody who you love says, "Oh, what are you writing about?" It's such a,
Mm-hmm.
that you have the antidote to that. You have a practice that's going to help you. I see JT is saying rest and sleep are definitely beloved muses, and Jasmine earlier was saying that she was appreciative of hearing about the rejuvenation process and the just taking a break. So, yeah, I don't think that um, there's a rush, and I think that we just need to let things percolate how they are and in their time, in their right time. I could have written a book about yoga nidra a long time ago. It would have been a much different book than if I had finished my book in March of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm grateful um, for that space that was provided, even though I probably didn't know it at the time.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm with you 1,000%. I think I wrote this in the book. I don't remember where exactly it is, but I do say that I'm grateful I never got what I always wanted,
Mm,
because I think about those moments, especially when I felt like I needed to rush. Anytime I
mhm,
rushed in those 3 iterations of that proposal, always felt like, oh, I have to hurry because if I want to get in Q1, that means that I need to hurry up and finish this proposal so that my agent can send it out and I can, you know, the plan, right? It's like this elusive plan that if I don't do it now,
right,
my time is running out, you know,
right,
this sort
right.
of weird pressure we put on ourselves to create in a certain timeline where the muse is ageless,
Mm, mm-hmm, yeah,
and that which we are called to create is ageless as well. I rather create something in the time it wants to be created as opposed to I want to create now because I am in this like marketing strategy in my life timeline that I'm going to do this now because then I want to get married and then I want to have kids and then I want to do this and this and this and then in 5 years I want to be doing this, and it's like it's great to have a plan and be goal oriented, but I'm just I'm a marathon runner, you know.
yeah, yeah.
I'm a serial monogamist, you know. I'm a because I know I'm innately impatient, my
Mm,
practice is to do the opposite.
right, right. Yes, there is value in the opposite. That's for sure. It's I definitely feel like this again, what we're really talking about, a lot of it is cultivating a relationship with the creative muse, understanding, just like you create a relationship with your partner or your kids, you have to cultivate and create and hold that relationship and honor that relationship and tend to that relationship. Because when you don't tend to it, I know this from many years in the film business of working with writers that would have writer's block, right? And it's like when the ego gets involved in the story, things start to get blocked.
Yeah, that's definitely been my experience for sure. The gripping happens when you're just like wanting. I mean, I remember I was so, it's so weird the way that my book kind of came together at the end because there was, I said this during an interview a couple of days ago where I was like, any smart thing I've ever said in my entire life, I try to put it in this book. I try to just, I try to just, like, if I was never ever going to write a book ever again, I just was trying to put all of this information in these 225 plus pages. And then I stopped and I was like, okay, why are you doing this? I don't
Mhm.
understand. Like, less is more. It's better for you to just peel away what is unnecessary and save it for another project, you know?
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
that's where the ego part came in and was just determined to try and connect the dots so that I didn't have to rewrite this chapter, right? I'm
Right.
like, no, I can make this fit. The story
Yep.
needs to go here, you know? And it I'm like, no, this is actually a blog post. This isn't part of the book. This is a story that I can share on a podcast episode. I mean, I don't have to share this particular thing here. And I
Mm.
think being open to that, that's the part where you're saying to nourish and care for the muse in a way where she can find her own flow in your work.
Right. And then you have to have the discernment to be able to know, right? Because it's a vibration. It's like when the
Yes.
muse shows up, there's a frequency. And it's time for you, as at least for me, it's like let me get out of the way and let me create the space for this magic to descend.
Yeah.
And yoga nidra is one way, rest is another way, walking in nature is another way. Whatever those things are for you, um, how do you create the space for that opening? Um, I want to make sure that we talk about because I also want to get to questions in a little bit. Um, I feel like we've kind of covered preparation as a ritual because all of this is about preparation. Um, I definitely love to talk about my practice of the compassionate no,
Yes.
which is really this practice of that when you get into the flow of something, that you're going to have distractions, whether they come in the form of emails, whether they come in the form of requests, whether they come in the form of things that feel a little bit extractive. And so what I like to do is to have something kind of already pre-written, which is a compassionate and graceful way of saying, no, not right now, maybe later, but this is what I'm doing, so that it's literally a cut and paste, right? You don't have to worry about um, being rudely, you know, answering someone or not returning an email, right? But in a way, just basically saying, I'm compassionately saying, no, not right now. This is part of your boundaries. This is part of what you have to do to create the space in order for you to be able to create. The other thing I would say is just looking at all the ways in which you create distraction in your own life,
Hmm.
whether that's focusing too much on what other people are doing, what other people are writing in the moment, what
Oh man,
what's happening
yes.
on Instagram. That's like the biggest time suck.
Yes.
Um, and then the last thing I'll say, and I'll turn it back to you, is you know posting on Instagram. Um, it, in my opinion, takes creativity. So decide where you want to put your creative energy. Do you want to put your creativity and your energy into a platform that you don't own? Or do you want to turn your creative energy towards your project, towards your book, towards whatever it is that you're creating? Taking long breaks from Instagram can be very rejuvenating to your creativity, and people will still be there,
Mm-hmm.
right? So letting go of, taking three, you can even start with just like 5 days. 5 days, replace that time that you would have spent on Instagram creating, writing, drawing, whatever it is. Thoughts, Rosie, on that one?
Yeah, this is a struggle for me for sure. Um, but it because I because I do spend a lot of time on social media, and it is just such a siphon of energy. Uh, and then it's reels, and then it's posts, and then it's TikTok, and it all has to be different, and it's a lot of work. In the time when I was writing, and I was even when I was doing the proposal, I would take long breaks where I just would disconnect, and I would spend my time. I actually posted a reel a couple weeks ago where I talk about being rejected 32 times and writing the book. And I do talk about taking long breaks, blocking myself out, or just saying, like, hey, I'm going to be gone for a couple weeks. I'll be back. I'm going to enjoy my summer. So I'll see you
Mm-hmm.
guys in the fall.
Right.
I won't be here. I'll be enjoying my life in real life. And it does make a big difference. It really does, being able to disconnect, because everything can siphon your energy, your
Mm-hmm.
creativity.
Mm-hmm.
We aren't built like our phones, right? We aren't built like our computers. We have, it's like OJS, right? Having that's very small amount of this life force energy that we have to just really care for. I think about it like I like to get really nice candles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because my sister always says, like, you'd have more fun just burning money, because that's essentially what you're doing, right? I mean, you're just burning your money. And it's like, okay, you can see it that way. I can see it as I get to really enjoy something that's handcrafted, and I'm supporting whoever I got this candle from, and use it sparingly when I feel like, okay, I light it for a couple minutes during the day just to get that lavender scent, and then I turn it
Mm-hmm.
off when I'm done with my writing. It's part of my ritual. But I think about my creativity in that way. It's like, I've got a little bit today. I
Mm-hmm.
can't very well wake up, do my morning writing, and then write a bunch of responses, and then get on Instagram and write a post, and then respond to DMs, and then try and write a blog post. And then, I mean, I can have all the best intentions. I mean, I do it all the time. It's like my to-do list. I'm going to create all this content, and then I just don't do it because it's so much work, right? And then you
Mm-hmm.
get distracted by seeing what everybody else is doing, and then it's energy output. So that
Yeah.
creative energy is leaving as you're watching somebody else's creative. So it's like what you
Yeah.
said just now that really, I felt it in my soul when you go, do you want to create for these other platforms that you're helping them, they're benefiting off of
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
your energy, your life force.
Yeah.
It's like what are they called from Harry Potter? The ones that suck your.
Like a succubus. I
Yeah,
don't
it's
know.
like
I don't
those.
know Harry
You
Potter
guys, what
too
is the
much,
Harry?
but
What is the The ones that are Dementors. Thanks, Deanna.
Okay, Dementors.
Yes, it's the
Yeah.
Dementors, that just siphon your energy. I'm like, no, no, I want to protect my creativity. She's special. She's
Right.
my queen, and I want to keep her happy and nourished and fed. And if that means saying no to
Mm-hmm.
people and to opportunities that are going to take me away from this, then I
Mm-hmm.
have to do that.
Yeah.
I'll just add one final thing that really just shocked me. A year ago, April 4th of 2021, I was in the middle, I was still writing. Was I still writing my book? Yeah, I was still writing, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was still writing the book. I think I was like on the last round of edits, in the last few chapters, actually. And I decided that I wanted to do this 500 words a day. I'm like, I
Mm.
wonder if I do 500 words a day, um, because I had this idea of writing a next book similar to what Mark Nepo did, right? Every day
Mm-hmm.
there's like
Yeah.
a quote or a prose, a question for the reader. So I said, I'm going to do every day 500 words a day and just reflections. That's all. Just reflections of whatever my meditation was that morning. Maybe it's a quote I read. Maybe I open a book and I just get inspired, or maybe I'm just ranting about how my boyfriend's really upsetting me. It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
500 words, commit. And I did it. And I just completed a year. And
Mm.
I did miss a couple of days. There was a couple of like days that I missed. I traveling, and then when I got COVID last summer, obviously there was like a 2.5 week period where there was nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but for the most part, I went back and I'm like, man, I completed a year. I wrote 130,000 words,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, that's a book. That's an
But
entire book,
yeah. Yeah.
right?
That's more than a book.
Yeah, that's like 3 volumes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But all it took, and it doesn't take long. I mean, it takes me maybe 15 minutes to
Mm-hmm.
just write.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it's all legible and it all makes sense,
Mm.
but there's something about it now that it's just so much a part of my ritual. 500 words a day. So,
Yeah.
so this strategy now, for those of you out there who don't have the time or don't think you have the time, find that muse moment in time for yourself, that space, and just commit to writing 250 words a day
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and see what
This
happens.
this reminds me, Rosie, of a podcast that I heard just before I started writing. It was an interview with Julia Cameron, and she's the author of The Artist Way.
Mm,
And one of the podcast interviewer asked her, "Have you ever gotten any material from your morning
morning
pages?"
pages. Yeah.
And she said, "All of my books, all of my 30 books have been taken from the morning pages. I basically decide what it is I'm going to write about, and then I go back through all of my journals and I find the information." And I was like, "Oh, well, I have like tons and tons of journals of morning pages, of notes, and I got everything out. And it was literally like, this is a bevy of information, things that I forgot that I even knew at one time, or even thought, or even felt at one time, was right there waiting for me to just receive it." So the idea of doing 250 words a day, whatever that time, I love that suggestion, because I do think that not only shifts the neural pathways, right? It makes it easier for us to be able to sit down and write, even when we quote unquote don't have anything to
Yeah.
write about, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah, I mean there are several entries in there where I literally write, I'm trying to get to 500 words and I'm like, I don't have anything else to say. I'm just trying to get to 500 words, blah 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 blah. I don't even know. And then all of a sudden something comes in like, "Oh, you know what I'm going to do today? I am going to go to Press Juicery and get a couple of juices because I'm really feeling like I need a juice today. Why do I feel like I need a juice?" And then I start writing about why I think I need a juice. And then all of a sudden something else comes in and you're just,
Mm,
it's the flow, right? You
the
enter the
flow.
flow. It's like entering into the river with your feet, with your bare feet. It's the flow is there. If you think about the muse as being present constantly, and all you have to do is just step into that river, it feels so much less daunting because we create this expectation in our minds that we need to do things a certain way, or we need to be a certain way, or have a agent from this specific agency, or have this specific publisher. And we don't need any of that in order to create.
No,
We don't. And
no.
it's now that I've been on the other side, and I have the bug, right? Because I'm like, book number 2, I'm working on it already. It's
Yeah.
already there because I enjoyed that process of writing. I'm definitely not, there's process of the book experience that you'll find will be your favorite and not your favorite. For
Hmm.
me, the creative process is definitely, I could live there forever.
Mine too. Mine too.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just the
Hmm.
most exciting. And yeah, and I think that everything that we talked about today, Tracee, is something that everybody here can put into practice. There's no, you know, hidden magician behind the curtain. There's no secret to completing something and having this, literally, these are my book notes in this notebook, having this turn to this.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like that can happen
Yes.
with just doing the work consistently,
Yeah.
you
And
know?
it doesn't have to be long. And having,
No?
you know, your vision board in front of you every day is, and capturing those moments, because that's the other thing that I want to just lastly say before we open for questions, is that the distractions are what steals the creative moments.
Yes.
How many times have you had an epiphany, a download, a knowing about something, and then all of a sudden something distracts you and it's gone,
Gone.
right? So, getting into the practice of whether you use your voice recorder on your phone, or you have a special place that, you have notebooks all around the house, which is what I have. I've got a notebook in my office, I've got one by my bed, I've got one by the bathtub. Anytime inspiration comes in, you can capture it. And then once you have that thread, it's just like a dream, right? When you dream and you don't remember the dream, but you remember, oh, there was a color green and there was water. If you just start pulling on the color green and water, eventually that dream starts to unravel. And it's the same thing with this. So the least amount of distractions you can have, the better, and the more you can get into the practice of just capturing, feeling the vibration of the muse, capturing what is coming in, recording it or translating it in a place where you can find it later, will be super helpful. So I want to open for any questions. If anybody has questions, raise your virtual hand and we'll call on you. And if you don't want to raise your virtual hand and you want to put something in the chat, we'll see if we can get to it. I'm going to go to gallery view. Oh, Sarah B. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Sarah B. Maybe Sarah B's not here right now. I'm going to go to Annie. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Annie. And I can't hear you. Deanna, are we?
Actually, can you
Oh,
hear me?
yes.
Actually, it was when I first went. This is Sarah.
Oh,
Um,
hey, Sarah.
when I tried to unmute, it said that it wouldn't let me unmute, and then it did. So I
Okay.
don't know if anyone else had that problem, but I'm here. Um, Basically, this is really great. Thank you all for sharing your ideas. Writing a book is something that has been on the agenda for a minute. Um, but the question that kind of came up for me is I too have things and ideas all over the place. And then to have to go back, I heard you say that, that information is there for you to create the book. But then the thought of where do I find it? Did I write it in a book? Is it on my phone? What was that process like to actually go through the information to organize it and, in the proposal?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my answer to that would be find one medium. Either your medium is going to be, I have 5 different notebooks and I basically write in those notebooks. And I know that when I'm ready to sit with my book, I gather myself with all those notebooks and a highlighter, and I highlight what is pertinent to the book I'm writing. Because all of the downloads that you receive may not be for this one book. They may be for book 2, 3, or 4.
Okay.
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 Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. Emarisa, Marie, go ahead and unmute.
I thank you first so much for sharing and all these beautiful, the imagery and everything. I love to carry those metaphors forward. My question is, did either of you ever have like a writing fever where you just couldn't stop yourself and then you weren't really caring for yourself? Or were you, if not, how were you able to maintain that flow of like nurturing yourself versus the muse?
Rosie, do you want to go first?
Yes. I don't know necessarily that I had a writing. I guess I could say I did. Um, the hardest chapter I wrote was chapter 11, and it was on essentially the theme was grief, and I just lost one of my pets literally that day. And it was really, really difficult for me to, and I had a deadline that following Monday. So I had to do this. And I wrote that entire chapter in one sitting where I was like processing a lot of what was happening in that time. And I almost felt like I needed to just keep writing. And I don't necessarily know that for me at that moment it was a negative thing. I think it helped me actually as a cathartic experience. Um, and I do remember taking some time off after that when I was complete. Um, by time off, I meant for me, taking care of myself is unplugging and not looking at my phone. My phone has a home. I don't carry my phone around me all day long. It has like an area in the house where it's allowed. And then the rest of the house, it just never goes to a certain, like it doesn't go into our bedroom at all. And I just give myself that respite. I have had the experience though with a friend of mine who wrote her entire book in like 4 days, day and night writing. It just came out of her, and she kind of didn't have a great experience with that afterwards. I mean, she felt very unsatisfied with really pushing herself because she just felt like she got really inspired and she had to just get it all out. And then at the end, felt like maybe she had pushed herself too much. So I guess I'm trying to find the answer to your question because I don't know that necessarily it's a good or a bad thing. I guess I don't know. I hope I helped with that.
Yeah, that's helpful. Maybe the differentiation of knowing, like really sensing into, is this the right in this moment?
Yes. Yeah, and I think that I think that one knows when you get actually, you know what? Now that you're saying that, yes, in the beginning there was some of the first chapters when I was saying I was trying to make things fit. It was some of those writings that I had in those moments where I went up to Portland and I was just really into the chronology of my story. And I was like, okay, I want to write this all out. And I was really just 2 or 3 days, just really into it. But that only happened 2 or 3 times for me.
I'll just quickly say, I think I was lucky because I was writing about Yoga Nidra, and I was very clear that I couldn't be tired. writing about Yoga Nidra, and that I needed to be in the space of not necessarily Yoga Nidra, the state of consciousness, but I needed to be in the flow of that in order to translate what it was that I was feeling and experiencing. So I definitely had flows, but the flows they weren't like, I can't imagine, I'm in bed at like 9:15. So there would never be a time where I'm like, out there writing all night, but who knows what can happen. Um, all right, let's go to, well, two things I want to do simultaneously, because I know, Rosie, you have a hard out to leave right at 6:15. Um, we are going to give away some radically loved and rested bundles that include our books and some other little goodies. So if you are interested in the random kind of choosing that we're going to do for that, just put your um, email address in the chat, and then we'll randomly choose them later. And as we continue to do that, Kelsey, I'm going to call on you.
Hi, I wanted to say hi, first of all. I haven't seen you in a while, but
Hi, Kelsey.
thank you for putting this on. It's been so helpful. My question for both of you is, have either of you ever felt like the ideas were not yours? Like we've got so many teachers around us, and we've learned from, so many circumstances, so many different people in our lives. And I feel like that's where I constantly get stuck. Because, like even Tracee, you have taught me so much, and you want to credit your teachers in that, but then I'm like, am I just regurgitating what has already been said?
That's a great question. What I would say is, first of all, cite your sources. This is another reason why not to use your creativity on Instagram, because people are constantly scouring Instagram looking for quote unquote inspiration, AKA stealing ideas. So what I would say is cite your sources, and write about your experience, right? What is your experience? You are a unique human being who has done these practices and maybe done them in a different way. And actually, I want to just give you some props here, because one of the deciding factors of me writing the book for Yoga Nidra, when I was in that place of should I write this book or should I not, was because I went to, I think it was Whistler, and and after the workshop that I taught, you were one of the people, along with like 5 other people that day, that asked, do you have a book on Yoga Nidra? I have never heard anybody talking about Yoga Nidra in this way. So that was an affirming thing for me to say, well, yes, I've received all of these teachings from different teachers, but I have a unique perspective about this subject matter that isn't being talked about or taught in this way. So find that through line. And the fact that you're asking the question that, you're concerned about parroting other people means that you're going to have the discernment, I think, to be able to understand this is what I have to offer from my own heart and from my own experience. And this is where I need to cite my sources. And I always need to do my research to take it back to the original lineage from where it came, or the original sages from where it came, if we're talking about yoga. Thank you, Kelsey. Annie, I keep seeing you moving around the board here.
Okay, I think it's working now. Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay, so you're on your phone too. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I couldn't merge them. My question is about protecting the beauty and the sanctity of the creative, like I'm writing a book, or all the way to what you're writing it about, and really truly sharing it with anybody outside of your beloved partners. Like how much do you protect it? I'd be so curious to know. Like friends, family, do you tell people, do you not tell people?
Yeah, I'll answer that quickly and then turn it to Rosie. So, what I learned let me just put it this way. What I learned is that for book 2, I'm not telling anybody what I'm writing about. That's what I learned. Rosie?
Yeah, I'm not a
Mm.
fan of sharing. I don't tell people what I'm doing. I don't ask for people's opinions very much. And very often I'm like this is what I'm doing. I I've always been, even when I'm working on something, I'm not a big, I might ask my friends for advice on certain things, but I have very hard boundaries when it comes to my creativity. I try to not. I don't even tell my partner sometimes what I'm doing. Like when he listened to the book, he was like, "Wow, this was really good."
Harley said the same thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I didn't give it to him to read at all.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I'm very much about, I think that there's one of my acquaintances, I will say, asked, she offered on several occasions to read and give me feedback and kind of do this thing. And I'm like, no. And she positioned it as a way, when I explained to her that it wasn't something that I was interested in doing, and positioned it as a way asking me essentially if I was insecure about it. And I'm like, no, it's definitely not
Mm.
an insecurity thing. It's a protective, I think, energy where I feel like I've seen, I don't know if any of you here have read Big Magic.
Yeah, I was
But
just gonna say that.
yeah, but I do believe in the transference of energy, like the muse. If you're not expressing her and you're out there telling everybody what she's communicating to you, she'll go find somebody who's willing to write her, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yeah.
And I 1000% believe that. So I'm of the mindset of just do your work in your cave and don't worry about what everybody else is doing.
Yeah. And I also would say that sometimes we hear things and we don't remember where we heard them.
Mm-hmm.
We
It's
actually
true.
think they were original idea. And then later we're like, ooh, that was like a workshop that, or, you know,
Mm-hmm.
so how I would phrase it also is that your creativity is sacred. Your downloads are sacred. It's just like when you have a very, um, what's the word I want to use here? Kind of like meaningful spiritual experience that blows your mind, right? The teaching is that you don't go and tell everybody, because it dilutes the experience. It dilutes the sacred experience, the spiritual experience that you had, right? You maybe talk about it with your teacher or one other person, but in this case, hopefully you have someone who's maybe an editor that you're working with, and that's your sacred space, right? You know, if you have an agent or somebody like that, it's in your sacred space. Otherwise, I would say don't um, too widely share. That's just my advice, because I've seen too many things happen where things get kind of,
Taken.
yeah.
I'm just gonna say it.
You.
Thank you, Debbie. And then NYC Jones, you're going to be our last one.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Well, hello from Argentina, and thank you very much for this. I am not willing to write a book in this moment, but I am an English teacher, actually a mentor. And for us, it has always been sharing is caring. So it's quite interesting to discover these things about keeping the downloads. And I came here because of other teachers, Elena Brower, her generosity, reading your book, Tracee, hoping to read your book, Rosie. And I wanted to say something that maybe it's not even a question, but Tracee, you said about identifying that inspiration and how you feel in winter. And I have been feeling tired. Even when I do yoga nidra and I rest and I try to sleep, I feel tired. And I had a session with my therapist and I said, it's like I need to hibernate just at the time when I really need to produce my work. It's the most active time of my year. In Argentina, it's fall. So it's the paradox. I need to rest and I need to work.
Yeah, it's a tough one, because
It's a
unfortunately, our world is set up right now that it doesn't take those things into account. Right? It's like January 3rd, you need to be on it,
Yeah, you need to
whatever
like
it
get out
is.
of it and just start
Yeah.
producing. Yeah.
So is there a way that you could preempt, I guess, what is going to be coming for that winter time, that you could actually start doing and start planning when you are in the season, your personal season of like, because if, in America, I think the teachers take off the summer, right? And so if you're somebody who's more inspired in the summer, it's like, oh, how could I titrate a little bit of this work over to this summertime so that it's ready to go? So I'm not in this exhaustion. I can still hibernate and I can still take the seeds that I planted and work with them. So I would say that it needs a different kind of planning on your end, because you know where your energy is living during those seasons. I hope that's helpful. NYC, it's good to see you. I'm waiting for your book. Go ahead and unmute yourself, love. Oh, we can't hear them.
Me
Oh, there
still?
it is.
Oh,
There it is.
now
There it
we
is.
can hear. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, okay, okay. Greetings and grace and so much gratitude for everyone and this opportunity. So this definitely touches me in a space because I always feel so compelled to share something on Instagram. And be it Facebook or in a crowd of just meeting minds, and I've actually had divine my own spiritual way say hush, like that's enough, but at the same token speak. So it's one, I want to learn how to have that drawback, because I guess I understand now as we're speaking that it all needs to be in one place and then delivered as like a whole package, like here and digest and breathe and such. So that portion is like, how do I stay put? Like, how do I stay in the frame of not saying anything when all I want to do is like, hey, y'all, come here, let me tell you what I know. Like, I want to do that. I just want to give it. That's part one of that. And two, when is enough? Like, all I do is write. All I
Mm,
do is write. And writings are everywhere. And I wake up out of my rest writing.
mhm.
I get out of the shower and write. Like, I pull over and write. When do you say, like, that's enough? Like, be still and just use what you have. Because
Mm.
it's so much.
I feel like, based on what you just shared, that you have enough and that you can start to gather everything that you have and start to organize. What is it that you have and where does it belong? And as far as not speaking, I wouldn't say, that we have to silence ourselves in some way, but it's about discernment, right? When and to whom and why and how much. That's the discernment. When, to whom, how, and how much. Rosie?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna agree with you. It sounds like you have a book already that just needs to be organized, and I'm really excited because I'm excited. I want to know what's see I want to know what are you writing about? I'm curious. I'm compelled now. So I think that there's that pathway that you need to now think about organizing everything that you have. Sometimes I think about this. I have this friend that is very similar with music. You know, he writes beats. He does EDM music. Very cool. He's definitely much younger than I am because it's so not my demographic or music type, but he makes these really cool beats and he works with producers and things, and this is what he does, but he's just constantly creating, constantly. I mean, on his phone. We can be having tea and he's just like, you know, whatever on his phone. Like, I just went to the bathroom. I came back. He's got like an entire song written in like that moment where I go and I come back. And he's been wanting to become an artist himself. He wants to be a DJ, you know, he wants to go and perform, and but he doesn't think he has enough material. And I'm like, you do this for a living. Like, this is what you make material for other people. Why don't you just put all of you just made a song just now. You can make a 5-track album. You can use that. You need 4 more. You can do them right now while we're sitting here in the next 15 minutes. And it was that sort of realization for him where he said, oh, in his mind, he felt like he needed to continue creating in order to feel worthy enough to become an artist. So I think if the muse is fairly active in your life, maybe she just needs to be organized so that you can continue to do the writing and bring it out into the world so that we can read your beautiful words.
Beloved, you said it, feeling worthy enough. Like, are you really a writer? You
Mm.
just, are you writer? Are you an author? You know, and you said it. That's gratitude for you for that, because I needed to hear that. You basically just told me you're worthy. So I have enough. You and Tracee, y'all, gratitude. Right. So much gratitude. I share.
Thank you to everyone, because we're all worthy. We're all worthy of being seen and being heard and for having our magic out into the world. And that's why Rosie and I wanted to do this and just give a little bit of something. And I feel like everyone who has spoken and shared has also given us something. So thank you for being our teachers in this moment as well. We'll send you a follow-up email with the book proposal outline, and hopefully we can all stay connected. Happy to see people that I know and new faces as well. Thank you, Rosie, for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, Tracee, this has been such a huge honor, and everybody here, thank you for introducing me to this beautiful community and for just having the conversation. And we're everybody that's here watching us, we're just like you. We're all the same. We didn't do anything different. We just did exactly what we said to you that you all are worthy enough and can do. And that's why we wanted to have this conversation, because there's so many unwritten lessons and wisdom and stories that we need them right now. And I think it's the support that we all need, right? So thank you all so much for being here, for sharing some time with us. And Tracee, thank you for providing the space.
Yes, of course. Thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful evening or morning, wherever it is that you are. And we look forward to hearing about your creative projects in the future. Thank you all.